الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وآله وأزواجه وذريته أجمعين. اللهم أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه. اللهم رب أرنا حقائق الأشياء كما هي. رب أرنا حقائق الأشياء كما هي. ربنا أرنا حقائق الأشياء كما هي. الله أكبر، لا إله إلا الله، الله أكبر. اللهم رب زدنا علما وإخلاصا وعملا. اللهم ربي كن لإخواننا في فلسطين وغزة وليا ونسيرا. صلى الله تعالى على رسول خير خلقه محمد وآله وأزواجه وذريته أجمعين. Okay, so we are continuing with Hallaq's the impossible state. Okay, so let's see. For the great majority of Muslims, for the great majority of Muslims today, the Sharia undoubtedly remains our source of religious and moral authority. I don't know what does it mean. I mean, Sharia is a source or a God? So Sharia itself become a source of religious. I don't know what religious means here. And moral authority. So they derive their morals from there. I don't know. So Sharia is not the guiding light, but one of the sources. Probably that's what he's trying to say, but it doesn't matter at this point. Whereas some Islamic regimes, it's in quotation marks, obviously doesn't think that those are Islamic regimes. So I don't know which are those, have adopted the policy of distilling from the Sharia while flagrantly disregarding both its procedural laws and communal context. Such punishment as dismemberment and stoning. Firstly, who is doing dismemberment and stoning? Saudi Arabia, that's not an Islamic regime. It names itself a Saudi regime, so it doesn't even call itself Islamic regime. And it's a monarchy. And a main propagator of American and the defender and supporter of American imperialism in the region. But obviously, taking from Sharia, what according to instrumentalizing Sharia is the greatest sin. فَتُؤْمِنُونَ بِبَعْضِ الْكِتَابِ وَتَكْفُرُونَ بِبَعْضٍ فَمَا جَزَاءُ مَنْ يَفْعَلُ ذَلِكَ مِنكُمْ إِلَّا خِزْيٌ فِي الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا وَيَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ يردون إلى أشد العذاب وما الله بغافل عما تعملون. وكثير من الآيات الأخرى. So if people obviously a large majority of Muslim, not Islamic, Muslim majority regimes you instrumentalize Sharia. There's no doubt about that. But obviously people like Hallaq and the people he's quoting are also instrumentalizing Sharia for their own modern or postmodern agendas. So let's be clear about that. The average Muslim, so he hasn't defined the average Muslim, so I don't know, how does he define average Muslims, arithmetically or mathematically or some other definition? I don't know. The average Muslim individual continues to find the Sharia a spiritual resource. Now, first it was religious resource, moral authority, and now it has become all undefined terms, basically. I'm not blaming him, he's just starting, but he's throwing at us too many terms without regard for any precision at this point. So Muslim individual continues to find in the Sharia a spiritual resource, a connection with God, and a way to discipline the inner life. Sharia also, it seems like here Sharia also includes tasawwuf or tariqah, what we discuss later under the rubric of technologies of the self. Again, say this is a postmodern term, technology of the self, popularized by Foucault, for example, in his history of history of sexuality in volume 3, I think, and in his lectures, posthumously published lectures. And on number 5, he's saying, see chapter 5, section 2. Okay, we'll see. To say that the overwhelming majority of modern Muslims, no, it's modern Muslims, average Muslim, modern Muslims, wish for the Sharia to return in one form. Sharia to return, it hasn't gone anywhere. One form or another is to state what anyone with even a cursory knowledge of world affairs would readily acknowledge. But probably he means Sharia as the basis of the state policy or something like that. The question of why they entertain this wish will be answered in good part in the following chapter, although this is not an intended objective of this book. Why they entertain this wish, I mean, you don't have to write a monograph on that. I can tell you about that. And I don't know whether the vast majority of people actually want Sharia to return. I mean, that's a statistical, factual question. It's not a... So it should be... If somebody is interested in that, they should look at the statistics and how accurate they can be. But from normative point of view, it doesn't matter what Muslims want. From Islamic point of view, it doesn't matter what Muslims want. What matters is what the Quran and the Sunnah and the ijma of ulama al-ummah, that's what determines what should be the case. Yet, as located in the modern condition, this wish entails an aporia. Modern condition. That is the dominance of capitalist imperialism, I guess. Aporia. What does aporia mean? So aporia, is dictionary meaning is a contradiction of sort. So I think he's fascinated with the word contradiction, because I think he started with that. The Islamic State version is both impossibility and contradiction in terms. And if you read his translation of Ibn Taymiyyah's logic, you'll see that he's not much of a logician. So yet, as located in the modern condition, this wish entails an aporia. Okay, whatever it means. Muslims today, including their leading intellectuals, no, this is another term. I don't know what intellectual means. Probably he means, there's non-Islamic scholars who peddles in Islamic topics like Hallaq, for example, although he is not a Muslim intellectual, but he is a Christian I don't know whether he's actual Christian postmodernist intellectual. Similarly, Muslims like him, I guess. Some of them are closer to Orthodox Islam, some are, far away from, and some reject it. Some are just outright secularists. Others are, not even Muslims. Just some are nominal Muslims. So I don't know. But as far as we are concerned, we don't have much interest in those intellectuals, except as far as it affects Islamic orthodoxy. Yet, as located in the modern condition with this wish entails an aporia, Muslims today, including their leading intellectuals, have come to take the modern state for granted. What does it mean? I mean, accepting it as a natural reality. They often assume it's not only to have existed throughout the long course of the history, but also to have sanctioned by no less than authoritative chroners. Now, see, so here is, as I mentioned last time, his sleight of hand. We should be aware of his sleight of hand, intended or unintended. I'm sure it is intended. Modern state. So he will slip between modern state and the state as such. Obviously, the necessity and the importance of I state and its necessity is seconded by the Quran, the Hadith, the Sunnah, the Seerah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Islamic history, Islamic fiqh, and Ijma al-Muslimin, Ijma fuqaha al-Amsar, of the state, okay, and its necessity, because a lot of Islamic obligations are dependent on it, and if an obligation is dependent on a condition, then condition becomes obligatory as well. And anyway, it's a human societies can't exist without a state, and never existed without a state of some kind. And by state we mean a system of legitimate use of force and coercive obligation, coercion, etc., or something like that. We'll define at some point, and probably we have already defined in previous sessions. So that's the state. On the other hand, the modern state is a specific form of the state which has existed throughout history. So modern state hasn't existed always, and it won't exist always. So in that sense, it is not natural. It is a contingency of history, but it is a fact. This modern state is a Leviathan, a monster, a unique human creation. We talked about it last time. And that's the greatest challenge to the Muslim in the Islamic world, to Islam today, the modern state, the imperialist modern state. And without deconstructing this state, overthrowing it, and creating a anti-modern Islamic state, we can't fulfill our obligation as Muslims in the long run. And the very existence of Islam is at peril in the long run if we don't do that. And it is commanded by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَجَاهِدُوا فِي اللَّهِ حَقَّ جِهَادِهِ وَاجْتَبَاكُمْ وَمَا جَعَلَ عَلَيْكُمْ فِي الدِّينِ مِنْ حَرَجٍ مِلَّةَ أَبِيكُمْ إِبْرَاهِيمَ وَسَمَّاكُمُ الْمُسْلِمِينَ مِنْ قَبْلُ وَفِي هَذَا إلى آخر الآية. And there are many others. So modern state is not natural, but it is a fact of life. So we can't ignore that. So these two things, and we should keep in mind when we read Hallaq's contentions about this. Okay. So they often assume it is not only to have existed throughout the long course of history, but also to have been sanctioned by no less an authority than the Quran itself. Now, he quotes somebody called Jackson on Islamic law and the state, as he has. So who assume leading interject have come to take modern state and grant acceptance, as you have conducted a poll of leading Muslim intellectuals without even defining who the leading Muslim intellectuals are, and the Quran itself. They often assume it is not to have existed. Obviously, modern state hasn't existed throughout the history, but the state has. And the creation of Islamic State is for sure sanctioned by not only the Quran but Sunnah and the seerah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. إجماع المسلمين وإجماع فقهاء الأمصار throughout the history. And this wasn't challenged until this contemporary world, where some pseudo-intellectuals and due to the imperialist education system and all that, and the general dominance of the anti-Islamic culture, or non-Islamic culture at least in the Muslim world, makes possible for people to say these things. And if some Islamic scholars have actually said these things, it's based on the misunderstanding of the situation. So the misinterpretation of the modern world and the modern state makes them claim sometimes that Islamic State is not required or it's not necessary. Okay, even nationalism, an unprecedented phenomena and one unique constitutive of modern state, is said to have been launched into the world by the Islamic Holy Constitution, similarly drafted in Medina 14 centuries ago. Even national phenomena and one uniquely constitutive of modern state is said to have been launched into the world. Nationalism. If somebody says that nationalism is Islamic, then he mentioned Kurdi and Mahmud and Qureshi on the history and composition of the so-called Medina draft. Constitution also note that architectonic use of the term state. Now, we get some idea of what he is getting at. Of course, Islam rejects nationalism, and Islam rejects constitution as well. And it is a misunderstanding to call Medina, Misaki Medina constitution. A constitution is something modern, uniquely modern, and Islamic State is not a constitutional state. Constitutional state is republic. But from that, if you are trying to infer that Islam rejects a state as well, then obviously it's another matter, which is not true. I mean, obviously not true, unless Anyway, so I think we understand his objective to a certain extent. So rejecting the idea of Islamic State through these sleight of hands, firstly creating these intellectuals as some sort of authority, and then probably he's going to dismantle these intellectuals and will say to us through that dismantling that the Islamic State doesn't exist, shouldn't exist, etc., or whatever he will say. But that's the structure. That's the background of his argument, which is coming to fore. But we'll continue from here, inshallah.